Huntrix from Kpop Demon Hunters is comprised of Rumi, Zoe, and Mira, and today we draw them in 6 different styles. Now, I think you're absolutely going to love the Sailor Moon style, but maybe there's another style that you're going to like. You won't know until you see the rest of the video, so let's start off with the glitch effect. I originally wanted to do anime as just one style, but then I thought about how much Demon Slayer and Sailor Moon would fit for both characters, and I thought I had to actually just add them as separate styles, because they are stylistically completely different. Now, as for the glitch, I just really wanted to do a simple glitch effect. I didn't want to do the similar colors that I did with my Rumi drawing, but I really wanted to give it its own unique flair and feel. So I just went with the old school glitch, I went with thicker, bolder lines, but I varied the line weight. So you're going to see some thicker blacks, you're going to see some thicker reds, and you're going to see some thicker blues all in different spots. And I think it really gives a nice, unique blend and flair to the overall design. And another thing that I love to do is I love to give these little flicks with the pen. I don't like having these really static lines. I don't think it really transitions that well. And now from the glitch effect, we're going to move on to the golden style. And now what is the golden style really? Well, that's just making it look like a golden statue. I want the little bit that is of Rumi and a little bit that's of Zoe up there to look basically like it was cast in gold. And this is where I think these grabby acrylic paint pens are going to work out phenomenally well. Now, I happen to like these particularly because they're very thick with the brush. It gives it that nice painterly feel, and you can overlap really well and get some nice smooth coverages. And with the little highlights that we're going to add on to the very end here, and that's how we're going to get that nice shiny reflective look. Now, I like to add the little black highlights just to make it look like it's something. It gives it a little bit of a cartoony feel, and I think it just makes the overall image feel like it fits on the page. Some last minute highlights with the gel pen that I like to use, and then we're going to call this section complete as we now move on to the pop art style. Now, if you saw my Jinhu drawing, you'll absolutely love the way this pop art style comes out. I like to, once again, I'm going to be using acrylic paint pens mainly because they layer so nice. And because it's such a graphical style, you have these big, bold visual colors, I think it works really well. I didn't want to just do a cartoon. Since I'm doing 2 anime styles, just to do a simple cartoon effect doesn't really make it worth anything or make it really valuable to me. But if we make it a pop art style, by adding really bold colors, by really ramping up what we see as iconography, and then giving it a nice vibrant background, we can add these really cool paint pens and paint colors and give it kind of a comic book feel, like it's jumping off a page. That's in essence what pop art is. So I think it comes out really well. It's a very legible image, but let me know what you think. From the bright, shiny world of pop art, we're going to transition over to the world of Demon Slayer. Now, if you're like me and you are a huge anime fan as I am, I absolutely love Demon Slayer. It is probably one of my most favorite animes, not just because it's a shonen anime and because it's really, but from an artistic standpoint, it's one of the most beautifully rendered and drawn anime. The fight scenes, all the different styles of breathing techniques, they are so well represented. So, for Mira, what I wanted to do was basically make her look like Shinobi from Demon Slayer. I wanted to kind of make it seem like she fits like that. I wasn't going to go with Mikasa just because I didn't think about overly sexualizing her as a character, and I wanted her to look rough and tumble and strong. And I think she represents that character the best, so I basically changed her wardrobe a little bit. I changed the coloring around a lot. And the reason why I'm going to change the coloring around a lot is because in the anime Demon Slayer, the brights are bright and the darks are dark. It sets that mood, that tone. Whenever they're going to hunt, it has that eerie darkness that just kind of scares you. Like they're always going into a forest, you don't know where they're going to go, especially like when they're fighting the Spider Clan. It gives it that eerie vibe. So it's like, how do you do that? Well, you make your darks dark, you make your brights bright, so that way things have a nice strong juxtaposition to them. It's a really excellent concept of composition. If you watch that anime, watch the colors. The colors are so important. So that's why I just didn't want to just make it a simple representation. I didn't make it a black. I made it more of a purple because that's what's in her costume, but I made it a darker purple. I added the tones and the highlights a little bit different. I added green here on the staff because once again, I wanted the green to pop against this nice bright blue. I feel like it makes that nice tonal value. It makes it really jump off the page. But I do want to ask you guys and gals one thing. If you've seen the anime Demon Slayer, who are your favorite characters or character? And you can't say Tanjiro and Nezuko. They are the absolute no. For me, it's probably Rengoku, and that's because of his strength and determination even through the face of underwhelming adversity. And just because he loves to say, tasty! And it fits. I mean, he's just such a goofball, but such a strong-hearted and strong-willed character. That's, I think, why I love him the most. From the world of Demon Slayer, we're now going to move on to the world of Sailor Moon. For Zoe, I chose Sailor Mercury as the overall similarity of design. Now, if anyone who's seen Sailor Moon, you might think to yourself, well, Sailor Mercury is really intelligent and Zoe's kind of the aloof goofball. And yes, that is true. And I think that's where the characterization ends. I looked more for the visual of like what would fit her as a character, not just because of the short hair. I just think representing wise, it looks so much like her, and it's a lot easier to transition to. But also, I think because of the fun-filled nature of both characters, I think it works really well. But more importantly, with these styles going forward, would you like to see me draw these characters in new different styles? For instance, like Lego and Simpsons and Dragon Ball, instead of just saying anime as a blanketed statement, would you like to see it in completely different anime styles? So for instance, like Kengan Ashura or Baki, etc. Like these strong shonen anime characters, if it's going to be a strong anime guy, or something like Spy vs. Spy. Wait, Spy x Spy. Why Spy vs. Spy? Spy vs. Spy is the old NES game. I don't even know why that came into Spy X Family is what I was thinking about. And yeah, I'm just going to ramble on. And I'm going to keep this in because I think it's actually funny. But yeah, here I am thinking about like an old 1980s NES game, but whatever. For the coloring, we're going to keep it very simple and very reminiscent of what we see in the anime. And I'm going more for the old school anime look. And I want a little bit thicker, bolder black lines than what you might normally see me do, because in the old anime from the 90s and the early 2000s, it had a much thicker, bolder outline, and the highlights and shadows were a little bit on the lighter side. So I think it's very reminiscent and hits very well. And with the world of Sailor Moon now complete, let's move on to the realistic side. Now, for the realistic side, it was accidentally a cop-out. You see, when I was dividing this up into 6 different styles, I really didn't realize just how little of space I gave for both the golden and the realistic side, and how much I gave for the glitch and the pop art style. But that doesn't mean I'm going to give it any less attention, and I think by the end of it, you'll see that it actually comes out pretty realistic for even such a small sample size. If you struggle with hair or drawing any kind of hair textures, here's a really good tip. 1, just go down with a general base layer. Then what you're going to do is look for groupings within the hair itself. You're going to look for your midtones, your highlights, and your shadows. And if you just work on breaking down all 3 of those little clumps together, then you'll actually be able to see the hair as a whole, and then you can add all the little subtle highlights or little subtle strands of hair that maybe overlap and interweave. But if you really want to get better, it's about studying. Realism is all about studying and practice. Studying and practice. If you want to get better at art, before you do any major art project, you should be spending about 1 hour to 2 hours of doing what I like to call warm-up drills. And what is that? Well, maybe we'll go over that in a little bit of another detail video when it comes out next Saturday, because I have a little special gift for the channel that's coming out, and that will be the Addams Family. And if you get that hint, then you'll know exactly what's coming out next. Now, as per the drawing, let me know in the comments which side did you like best. Was it Demon Slayer, Sailor Moon, realistic, glitch, pop art, or the golden style? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Mira's my favorite. She's the visual and lead dancer of Huntrix. Nobody can move like Mira.
This has to be one of, if not my favorite drawing that I've done on this channel in a really long time. And in today's video, you're going to see how I transform her into Surrealism, Golden, Demon, and Realistic. But you're going to see how I transform her, and I'm going to explain my art process to you live. Let's get started with the Surrealist side. Surrealism is a really unique art movement in that it explores the realms of dreams, the unconsciousness, and it expresses the power of imagination. It also seeks to liberate thought and expression from the constraints of logic and reason, basically through dreamlike imagery and symbolic representations. Now, what does all of that fancy mumbo jumbo mean? Well, let's delve into it a little bit. Here, I'm going to use very expressive colors that are not traditionally found in portraits. I'm going to give it a dreamlike quality, an almost alien concept to us when we think about what skin color is and what hair color is. We see these things conventionally in anime and maybe some other medium, but through the traditional lens, it does not exist. That's what'll give it its almost haunting, dreamlike quality. It challenges what art is because it wonders what it could be. What can we think of that doesn't exist now? So, to give it much more of a simpler effect, I basically change around everything that we know, almost to tertiary and complementary colors for the skin and the hair. And that will give it this really awesome, neon, funky, graphical representation of Mira, which is absolutely amazing in my opinion. I mean, I love this section. It's one of my favorites. This is the kind of artwork that I love to do when I'm just doing artwork for me. I love creating things that are bright and vibrant or super creepy, but things that just make you go wow as they jump off the page. And I think you will love it too. But does it pass the dreamlike quality? Let me know in the comments, because now we're going to head on from the surrealism side to the golden side. And at the heart, we're going to need a lot of gold colors, like these. So how do we achieve the golden effect? Well, we're going to add a big base layer of a general medium tone of a gold color. It's a yellowish ochre kind of combination. It's not yellow ochre, but it's not yellow. But here's where the magic happens and how we transform it into a golden statue. What I'm trying to achieve with this overall effect is basically make Mira into a perfectly cast golden statue. Ultimately, how do we achieve this? Well, that's where the artistic magic happens. Although this side did not take me nearly as long to complete as some of the other sides, it took me a lot more time, and that's because there are lots of layers here. As you can see with the first base layer that we laid down, it took an exceptionally long time to dry. Now you might be thinking, well, it's alcohol markers, they don't take that long to dry. True, but I want to make sure that they are 100% dry between each subsequent layer that I'm going to add on the top. As you can see, when we start adding some of the darker browns and some of the other hues of yellow, we can get the jawline here built in, we can get the lips built in, and that's how we're going to get that nice golden statue effect. We're going to transform it slowly but surely with little bits of layers of different browns, because we want to make sure that there are not only different hues but different colors, because a gold statue is not just gold with some brown and some white and some black. It's going to be lots of different vibrancies of yellows, maybe even some greens, some oranges, etc. But you have to figure out where they are, where the darkest parts are, where the lightest parts are, and that's how we're going to transform it into something magical. To achieve some of the smoother blends that you're seeing in the whites, I'm using a blending stump, and that's really going to help smooth out all the highlights. Then I'm going to go over lightly, not with a white. We want to make sure we use as little white as possible. This is actually a very, very light yellowish green. It's like a chartreuse meta white. But when we go over it again with a little bit of white and then we just fade it out ever so slightly, it makes it pop like white, but it's not. And therein lies some of, once again, that little bit of magic. Using as little white as possible, trying to use other colors that emulate it. And with the golden section complete, it's time to see what Mira would look like as a demon. Now, from the movie, we do have an idea of what one of the female leads looks like as a demon, but I don't want to just do a simple one-for-one. This is kind of like my interpretation of what Mira would look like as a demon, not just doing a basic one-for-one, because if we do a basic one-for-one and we kind of just cheat code our own style in, well, then it's just going to look like a carbon copy of Rumi, just with a slapped image of Mira over the top, and we don't want to do that. We want to change the facial structures, we want to change the eyeshadow, change the hair color so that it looks and feels like it would be her. So how do we achieve this? Well, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. The way I'm going to do it, which is kind of like the easiest way for me, is by using tons of different layers of alcohol markers. If you look very closely at a lot of the demon characters, they have a translucence quality to their skin. It's not just a flat matte color. It's not a harsh purple. It's not a very light purple or even a dark pink. It's got almost like little subtle undulations within the shadows. And that's where alcohol markers are going to be exceptional, because you're going to get all these little gradients around the eyes and around the cheekbones, because Mira has a very specific angular shape to her face. It's very strong, it's very represented, she's got very prominent cheekbones and very pulsating, strong, deep eyes. They're very powerful. If you actually look, that's where a lot of her strength as a character, I think, comes through, is her eyes can tell a story about just how angry she is at different moments in the movie. And that is what I think I want to stress most in this particular section of the drawing. For the demon markings, I really want to make sure that I use paint pens for one specific reason. I want them to feel like they're not only jumping off the page, but they're really stamped firmly onto the skin. I want them to feel like as if they're almost carved into her flesh. I really want them to stand out against the softness of her skin. I really think that this just kind of comes across just ever so perfectly. I could be wrong, but maybe it's not me, maybe it's something different. But let me know what you guys think as we move from the demon to the realistic. I'm changing things up with this realistic side in that I'm going to do almost nearly all of the hair at once, mainly because her hair is very particular. It's pulled back in the long ponytails, it has a very unique striking quality to it, and I want to make sure that I get it just right, because if you know me, hair ain't just my thing. It's a really tedious amount of work, but I think I get a beautiful quality to it in this particular section. And that's not just to toot my own horn, I was actually genuinely pleased with the way this overall came out. It worked with a lot of pencil work though, because we have to basically add a nice little base layer of alcohol markers and then work gently over the top with tons and tons and tons of colored pencil work. And that's okay, because you're going to get a really beautiful smooth series of blends that give this nice vibrancy and shine to it. Now, as you may have already noticed, very similar to my Zoe drawing, I'm going to keep this very accurate to her shapes of how she looks in the movie, and that's mainly because I didn't want to change too many things around this particular go-around as well. That's because all of it looks very similar, and if all of a sudden I change the facial structure in the eyeball, I think it would look a little bit too out of place with everything else looking so strong like Zoe. To get these nice little hairs, we're going to need really sharp color pencils. So when we add in all these extra hairs, it's going to give the effect that she's been out on stage for a really long time, or it's going to make it look like she's been fighting a bunch of demons. And you know what, with her, both of them can be true. We're like 90% the way done with the hair, but I want to make sure that now is the time where I go, before I add those final highlights and details with the hair, to finish up with all of the skin. I want to make sure that I get all the base tones and all the basic highlights and shades in, because when I go back over with those to make the stray hairs across the face, I'm not going to get any weird purple smearing or pink smearing from all the hairs. I want to make sure it looks just right, because we're going to see I'm going to need a really sharp pencil to add those just fine little feathery hairs across the top. But as you can see, with any color pencil work, it's a very slow process. It gets the most blends, but comes with a cost, and that cost, well, is time. And that's where you can get a lot of better quality blending in an alcohol marker, but it will kind of look either washed out or very thin. If you want to get something that's really vibrant and really strong with your shadows and your highlights, then you might need to go with alcohol markers. I like kind of working mixed media. I like using a little alcohol markers, some color pencil work, some paint pens, all to give this uniqueness and quality to my overall design. And similar to what I said in the demon section, I want to make sure that this eye is just right. I want to make sure it has that same striking quality that it does in the demon section, but with a more realistic tone. So I'm going to make sure that the eye color is just right and make sure that all the shadows are just perfect. And just like that, we are finished. Which side is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe, and if you really like this, YouTube thinks that you'll like this video that's popping on your screen now.
She's a rapper and lyricist.
And today we draw Zoe from Kpop Demon Hunters in 4 different styles. But not only that, you're going to learn how I do my realistic, how I'm going to draw Cuphead, how I'm going to transform her into a Lego character, and how I'm going to transform her into a Vivzie Pop character. But let's start off with the Cuphead effect. For the rubber hose styles, we have to go back all the way to the 1920s and the 1930s. This is where we saw Disney start with the animation that we know as the rubber hose style, and that would give birth to such awesome classics like we see in the video game Cuphead. And even further, it gave inspirations to such awesome shows like SpongeBob SquarePants and The Amazing World of Gumball. In essence, what the rubber hose style is you want the character to basically look and feel as if they've lost all sense of bones and structures. They're going to be very loose. The laws of physics don't really get applied to characters like this. Think of, for instance, Olive Oyl and Popeye in the early cartoons, how their bodies would just kind of flail around, or when after Popeye would eat spinach, how it would travel throughout his whole body until finally it would reach to his arms and make him super strong. But it would break the dimensions of what we know as physical reality, and it would kind of just give a wave-like pattern as they would move. That is the essence of the rubber hose style. And they call it rubber hose because their limbs tend to be these little round, spindly, hose-like shapes. And they kind of undulate in these hose-like patterns as well, almost in a hypnotic snake-like pattern. But how do we achieve this drawing style? Well, that's going to be a little bit of the easy part and a little bit of the difficult part. What we're going to do is start off with a strong base. So as you can see with Zoe, we gave her really large, solid base, but the arms are very wiry and very spindly. They're very tubular, no pun intended. So they're going to look almost elongated and exaggerated. Lots of exaggerated forms. Even the fingers at the top, even though they get kind of cut off by the image, they're going to be round and they're going to be very elongated, exaggerated. These are the things that you wish to achieve with this effect. Over-exaggerate all of the limbs, and then always finish off with a nice, thick, bold outline. And I don't know about you, but I really like the way this looks. It might seem simple, and it might seem childish, but I think it's alright. But let me know what you think as we now move on to the Vivzie Pop style. Now, some of you might not be familiar with what is a Vivzie Pop style. Well, it was created by Vivian Medrano, and she is the creator of both Hell of a Boss and Has Been Hotel. They are cartoons that I absolutely love. They originally started out on YouTube, but now have been actually simulcasted on Amazon. So if you have Amazon, you want to give them a try, I would definitely recommend Hell of a Boss first on YouTube and then Has Been Hotel on Amazon. They are incredible. But she has a very unique art style. One that is pretty much unlike anything I've ever seen. It has flares of anime with the hair. It has flares of kind of Fairly Odd Parents. It has a mixture of all these different art styles and classic cartoon styles. The exaggerated eyes, the pointy hair, the sharp line features. It has all of it. Now, I stylized this particular section after a combination of two characters, Vaggie from Has Been Hotel and Millie from Hell of a Boss. These are two completely different characters and very similar at the same time. You see, one of the things that I love about Vivzie Pop characters is they have really strong identities. You know exactly who they are, what they're about, they have a presence to them. So Vaggie is this really strong woman. She's very powerful, and Millie is the same way. But Millie is also very loving to her husband, Moxie. And Vaggie is very loyal and very strong and very independent, and she loves Charlie. So you get these really smooth and really awesome character blends, and I want to incorporate that into this unique design. I didn't want it to feel like a red demon, but I didn't want it to feel like a gray version of Vaggie, so I wanted to basically keep that human element with the skin tones, but I loved Millie's hair, so I wanted to represent that, but I loved Vaggie's striking eyes. Well, if you know, you know. But anyway, I love the nose and a lot of the shapes that she uses, so I wanted to make it look still like it's Zoe, but in a Has Been Hotel style. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it a hit? Is it a miss? This is what I love most, is connecting with you guys, and then let me know what you think as we now move on to the Lego style. I haven't done Lego and I can't tell you how long, and it is one of the most iconic, recognizable images from not only our childhood, but in all of iconography. It is a very legible image. So much so that when they made the Lego movie, you can just see the distinct features that all the different characters have that make them feel very unique and very unique to the characters that they're designed after, but also feel like they are Legos. Like you could reach out, touch them, and play with them, but they're just Legos. That is one of the coolest things about the design. It has to look like the toy. If you fail to just make it look like a random block and just some rounded edges, it won't feel the same. So we have to focus on the shading. This is a real challenge. It has lots of subtle highlights as well. You can't just throw a couple little random shades and then go, haha, Lego, rounded shoulders, big wide body. It doesn't work like that because it just won't look like it fits. So the challenge here is to make sure that the rounded areas have the proper highlights and shading, but still kind of feel flat across the front because they have to have that blocky feature. It's a challenge where I think it came across pretty good. I think it's pretty legible. Could I have added a little bit more? Yes, but then it becomes hard. Where do we add the detail? Where do the details stop? It's kind of like the push and pull of art whenever you're trying to find and discover where you go and where you kind of pull back and say, hey, this is enough. You're going to overwork the piece. I think here it's just legible enough and just represented enough without adding too much detail that would kind of lose what the overall image may look like, because we still have to add all those wonderful features that are reminiscent of what we know as Lego. One little final erase of all the final lines just to make sure that we don't have any images, because we want to make sure that the lines are non-existent. And we're going to move on to everyone's favorite, the realistic side. Now, for the realistic side, I'm going to go with a combination of both the movie and a realistic person. And what I mean by that is I'm going to add a lot more detail that might not necessarily be in the movie, but I'm not going to change around the eye or the shape of the jaw. I've already changed the character so much, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love when I do these 4 different styles, is sometimes we get a wacky looking character that's completely devoid of the original image, and sometimes it's very reminiscent of the reference image used. But if I didn't have a realistic side that had an eye that looked similar to Zoe, then it really wouldn't resonate at all with Zoe. It would just not be anything like it. And I know that there are other artists that do completely big redos of all the characters in one style. So like you might have Adventure Time Zoe or FNAF Zoe, etc. And you might draw the entire character. I kind of like having 4 different styles this way, where the character looks completely redrawn and it's got 4 different styles, but yet it matches up into this weird, cool, creepy looking character that's sometimes funny looking. And in this case, I think with the cartoon styles, it does look a little bit funny. It's something that I like, and I know my community likes. But if you'd like me to see me redraw all the characters in completely fun new ways, where it's a whole new redesign from ground up, let me know. I have done that a couple of times when I was doing Has Been Hotel, and that seemed to get a really nice warm reception. I can do full Lego, I can do full anime, I can do full like Dragon Ball Z, for instance, because that's something that I love. But if it's something that you want to see, you guys and gals, let me know in the comments, because you fully dictate this channel. I listen to you. I answer all of your comments. If you take the time to comment something and you love what you see and you really want to see something, as long as it's something that the overall community wants to see, I will definitely try my best to make sure that I can accomplish it. Now let's get on to all the wonderful aspects of realism. First off, as you know, I say it all the time, it takes time. And I know people don't want to hear how much time it takes, but it does. This realistic side took me about 3 hours. And because it's a very simple drawing, but that does not mean there are no details. For instance, with the blush and the eyeshadow, after all the skin tones are down, we're going to add gentle layers of purple and then pull all those skin colors back on top. That's how we get all these nice blends. It's slow, light-pressured color pencil drawing. You don't press hard here. You want to make sure that you can still have some paper to blend into. If you press too hard, then you have no paper to blend into, and you're just going to get a mud mixer throughout your color pencil work, and we don't want that. We want smooth blends with definition of jaw lines, eyes, nose, mouth, etc. And the only way we can do that is making sure that we don't stress the paper too much. And with color pencils, unfortunately, they really do stress the paper. So we want to make sure that we go lightly with all of our work and make sure we can get all those smooth and beautiful blends that we're used to. Another thing that you're going to see me do a lot in this drawing is adding lots of stray hairs. You're not going to see this perfectly coiffed hair. She is a warrior, so I want to make sure that there are lots of little stray hairs that are going to flick out here and there. Her hair is going to be a little messy. As she's fighting, as she's performing, her hair is going to be becoming a little undone. It's going to be a little unkempt. That's okay, because let's face it, we're all human, and I want it to look as realistic as possible. And to achieve that, we're going to add all these subtle blue shadows, reflective highlights into the hair. One, not just because it's what's reminiscent in the movie itself, but because we want to make sure that all these subtle reflective highlights add those layers of dimension within the hair. That's where the realism comes in, is when we're adding all these little subtle values of color and hue, etc. We want to make sure that we add them. Not too much, because we don't want to overpower it. Her hair is black. It's going to have primarily black, gray, and white. But a subtle hint of color here and there goes a long, long way. And another thing I do want to emphasize is as we are finishing up and drawing the eyeball, we want to make sure that we emphasize the eyeball is a round object. It is not flat. It is not just a gray. It is not just a white. It's a value transition from grays to whites in a three-dimensional spheric sense. We want to make sure that there is dimension because the eyeball is sitting deep within the socket and it's round and it's recessed. It's going to have a curvature. So to make sure, we want to make sure that we always blend it in curvature. Same thing with the iris. It is round. It is also part of a bevel. If we make sure that we add those little bit of details, it goes a long way to taking something that's decently realistic and something to make it very realistic. This is something that when people draw hyperrealism, that's when they take it to the next levels, adding in all those subtle details, more and more and more. For the blades, I kept it kind of simple. I didn't want to go too crazy. I wanted to make sure that they were represented, but I wanted to have them more of a glacial feel, a translucent ice quality, and not as white as stark they are in the movie. To me, this feels more weapon-like and more realistic. But let me know what you think once again, because I love reading your comments. I want to know what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like. And now, we are done. Let me know what is your favorite part. For me, I think it's the Lego or the Vivzie Pop, but maybe for you it's Cuphead or Realistic. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you all in the next video. Kpop Demon Hunters has taken the world by storm on Netflix, and today we draw Rumi in 4 different styles. But we're not just drawing Rumi today, you're going to learn my step-by-step process so that you can get better at drawing these styles yourself at home as you follow along with me. Let's get to it with the glitch effect. When I like to do the glitch effect, and it can really help you out at home, is to first start with a light black outline. And the reason why I choose a light black outline is because I'm going to wind up going over it again, and this will give it a really bold outline later on. Now, when it comes to coloring the glitches in, I like to use brushed paint pens. And the reason why I choose brush paint pens rather than just a traditional Posca is it gives a feathery effect. So as you can see here, when I do the glitches and the glitch lines, there's a little bit of a taper to it. And that taper will give a nice effect. But we want to make sure that also we get a nice smooth outline. And for me, I get better control when I'm doing the outlines with a brush. Now that's maybe just because I have a really good history of painting as a background and it helps me, but to each their own. I will say you'll learn multiple ways throughout this video of how to do all these effects. There is no one right or wrong way. Find what works for you. But if you happen to have brush pens, I would try them out because I think you'll get a better texture and a better quality when you do the all different effects. So as you can see here, it's got really a nice, beautiful little taper. It kind of just flicks off and has that nice finish at the end. And that's why sometimes I feel with Poscas, they kind of just abruptly end. And it almost looks like you're just tracing little lines. Now, if you're having problems, once again, doing the lines and keeping them straight, I 100% recommend a ruler. But the biggest thing that I will tell you to make this effect work really well and to get that awesome effect that you always want, make sure that you always vary your lines and vary your spacing. Don't just put them all in one spot and make them all the same length. It's just not going to look as good as you want. It's just going to look a little too cartoony, a little flat, and it won't have that three-dimensional look that you want. So what I would always recommend 100% is pick and choose where you're going to put all your little flicks of lines, and do vary them up in size and shape. Some could be fatter, some could be thinner, some could be, a little bit of a curve, but I don't like to too much curve unless you're going for a certain aesthetic. With the glitch effect complete, we can now move on to the anime style. And now you might be thinking to yourself, well, wait, it's not really an anime, and that is true, it is animation. Actually, it's closer to something like Into the Spider-Verse. It has very reminiscent animation styles, that semi-stop motion, it's really cool effects, love the coloring throughout, so it has lots of things that make me feel very similar to that when I look at clips and watch it. But I will say there are some things that make it a little bit unique and different as well, but strictly speaking from an anime style, how we want to render this down into an anime is break it down to its simplest forms. So how do we break that down into the simplest forms? Well, we want to just basically start with flat coloring. So as you can see with the face, we're going to add one nice layer. Then we're going to do the hair with, once again, one nice simple base layer. And then we're going to just add where all the three-dimensional effects would be, a shadow and a highlight. As you can see, I kind of messed up, but that's okay because we're going to fix this little part. What happens when things bleed over and you get a little bit of purple inside the skin tone? Well, as soon as we finish up with these highlights, I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. But first, know that there are two different ways to do highlights. You can either use a paint pen or you can use a color pencil. Both give you two different types of textures, so try both out and see which one works best for you. Now, to correct all of those little lines that I was talking to you about earlier, you can either use a Posca, you can use an alcohol marker, or you can use a nice little feathered ink pen like I'm seeing here. Now, these I really like the most. They offer really flexible textures, and you can get nice little line weight. And what's line weight? Either thick or thin old lines. You can change it up and get wonderful little variants. So, once again, these are all different things that I want you guys to try out at home and find out what works best, again, for you. From anime, now we're going to explore her demon form. Now, we do know that she has a demon form in the movie, but I want to explore more about how she would look like as Ginu, where it's almost fully taken over, not just half of it. So for this, we're really just going to push a lot of the colors that we see in Ginu, and then we're also going to add all those nice little tattoo scarring details and everything else. For me, this fundamentally comes down to coloring and execution. I wanted to basically look just like her, but I also wanted to have a little bit of what I like to call an anime feel. I want it to look like the animation. I don't want it to look like a carbon copy of anything. I kind of just add my own little flair to it, just to make it a little bit more fun and interesting. I add a little bit more boldness to the colors, once again because just doing a standard carbon copy, for me, it's just not fun. So I had to reinvent things and try to make it fun in my own way. I want each piece to feel like it's an individual segment. I can do a carbon copy all I want. And when I used to do that when I was younger, and this is a good lesson for all you young artists out there, if you just do copies and copies and copies, yeah, you might get better at art, but you'll burn yourself out. You're going to burn yourself out so fast you won't even realize it. So do yourself a favor, have fun with art, but don't just do the standard, making it look exactly like the image before you, because it's just, in the long run, not going to be a fun experience for you. The last minute details to finish up as we head on over to the realistic side. Now, there is no easy way to say this, but there is no secret ingredient to realism. There just simply isn't. It is meticulous. It takes a really long time. And if you've seen my videos, you're about ready to hear something that I've said 1,000 times. And that is, realism takes a long, long time, and this takes more than the entire piece. This section took me about 4 hours to 3 hours in total. I think it was actually like 3 1/4. But the rest of the piece only took me that long, because it's a lot simpler of designs and colors, and I'm usually a lot more free-flowing when I'm doing funner things, and usually realistic is just about paying attention to details and making sure things look right and how we approach certain things, like skin tones versus hairs, etc. But I'm going to help you break down how my process is to help you get better. If you're a young or beginner artist or even an intermediate artist, then stick in with me, because this is going to get a little bit in-depth. So how I like to tackle realism is, once again, to work with a simple base layer. But as you can see with the hair, one thing that we want to do, and hair is my enemy, it's something that I've always just struggled with, but one thing that we can do is to make sure that we kind of bunch everything into clumps. So as you saw, when I add the alcohol markers, I kind of added the layers of colors in the general pattern or shading value that I wanted. And now, I'm going to go over with all of those nice rich color pencils, those really strong darks, and the beautiful tones of highlights. But I'm only working at about 7 times speed here, so you can actually get a see for the speed at which I'm drawing, and how much I bounce back and forth between different colored pencils to get that smooth gradient effect. Same can be said as we start to work with the skin tones, except this is where you're going to go really, really soft. But this is also where paper matters. You see, different papers are going to have different grains and different textures attached to them. I like using a mixed media paper because it allows me to do a whole bunch of different mediums without too much warping within the paper. But there are also papers that are really perfect for color pencil, but horrible for something like watercolor or paint pens or alcohol markers. Marker paper is extremely flat, but not really that great for for paint pens or for color pencils. So you have to really decide sometimes where you're going to push and where you're going to pull, because certain papers are going to offer certain things that not all papers can do. Mixed media kind of gives me a little bit of a balance between all those, but it doesn't do anything great. So it's in the eye of the artist. If you're a Posca person, then you're going to want really something thick like a Bristol board. But if you're not, and you're just kind of somebody who likes color pencils, then you're going to want something very flat. If you're really loving alcohol markers and you love that opaque pastel effect, then I would definitely look into marker paper. It's very smooth, and yes, it is very flat, but it also has a certain thickness to it that allows you to blend layer after layer after layer without damaging the paper. Because if you use any one of these mediums too much, they will destroy your paper. So whenever I'm done with one style of medium, whether it's Poscas or it's alcohol markers or it's colored pencils, I will wait a while for them to dry. I don't like using a hair dryer, because when you use a hair dryer, once again, that heat is going to stress the paper. And if you're not careful and you're not really following through, you can easily get all the pills and burrs on your paper and destroy it, and then before you know it, all your hard work has gone up in flames. One last little highlight, and we're about to call this piece finished. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. Thanks for sticking with me. I've had a little bit of a cold, and as you can probably tell, my voice is not the same as it normally was. So if you appreciate this artwork, and I hope you do, then please do me a favor, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next amazing art piece that I will create, which will probably be Gino, maybe even in demon form, but you gotta stick around to find out. I'll see you all in the next video. The Saja boys from the movie Kpop Demon Hunters have become so incredibly popular, and today we draw them in 4 different styles. And the 4 styles are movie, puzzle, realistic, anime, cracked, stone, neon, and a little mysterious one for mystery at the end. Let's start off with the stone effect. One of my favorite things with this series is transforming all of your favorite characters in fun and new ways. And if you like this content and if you want to see more future content, then please do me a favor, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on another cool transformation. Now let's talk about what the stone effect is. In essence, what it is trying to transform it into a stone carving. This is a little bit different than the cracked effect that I do, as we're just purely working in gradations. I will be adding little stone cracks here and there, and little what I like to call pithing, which is all where all the tiny little dips and dots that come throughout the stone. That's just from aging over time. When weather hits stone, it'll slowly erode it, and you'll get all these tiny little imperfections and dots, and sometimes pieces will crumble away. So we want to showcase that in this. One reason why I really like also starting off with this stone effect is it kind of gives a really clean design. There's very little transitions, it's very easy to blend out. You're going to work with stronger, bolder outlines just so it has that nice stone effect. And you want to make it look as best as you can. Here's a few tips. What you're going to do is really make sure that you establish all of your grays and your middle tones. You want to leave a lot of white, because when we look at stone statues, you'll see that there's large sections that are light and very large sections that are dark. With the stone effect complete, it's time to move on to the puzzle pieces. And basically, this is exactly what I intended to be. I want it to basically look like as if this section came right out of a puzzle, and we're just putting all the pieces together. But instead of putting it together, we're drawing it in. This is where it's kind of fun, but you have to take your time, making sure that the puzzle pieces not only fit the overall image, but it also looks like it would be part of a puzzle. You don't want to just randomly throw in weird-looking, janky puzzle pieces. You want them to make it feel like it fits. So do take time, and if you need to, if you want to try this effect out yourself, grab some tracing paper and then just trace over the image. And then that way you don't have to waste hours of potentially erasing a really good image that you liked. You can then work with the puzzle pieces through the traced image to find out which kind of image works the best for you. In fact, that's a really good tip for any beginner artist and even some intermediate artists. If you're having troubles with certain styles, draw over it with a piece of tracing paper so that way you can practice on the cheap tracing paper and you don't destroy good quality paper. Paper is so expensive. Do not waste it. Treat all of your art supplies and they will treat you fabulous in the long run. One last tip for if you're trying this out at home, make sure that you do change up the color of the pieces to kind of denote some shadows and highlights throughout the drawing. And with this complete, we are now going to move on to the cracked effect. Now, for those of you who have seen the cracked effect and you've seen me do it numerous times on my channel, it's one of my favorites to do. The one thing I will not be doing with this particular effect this time around is I will not be adding in all the little micro cracks and spider webbing throughout. Now you might be asking why. It's not a cop-out. I just didn't want to damage Jinu's face that much. I feel like if I would have filled in this entire thing with all these little spider web crack marks, it would not be a really good legible image. And most of the image is Jinu's face. And if a lot of it was crack marks and then just spider webs throughout, it wouldn't look good. And so I chose in this particular instance not to do it. If you want to beat me up in the comments for it, go ahead. Have at it. I'm totally down with it.
What the hell you talking about? Always being so loud. Get my name out of your mouth, or I have to knock your lights out. Time out. Ni on my bullet or wine out. Little baby boys and girls, peak on high way to stop now. Go my didn't out of some party, go drop out. Go against me, you wipe out. So chill out and stand down. 한결같이 똑같은 너희들이랑 달라 stand out. 하루 올라가는 몸값, yeah I'm more out. 놀아주려면 바빠 너무 바빠, see ya I'm out.
Now we're just going to finish up with a little bit of color here as we then slowly move on to the neon effect. Now traditionally the neon or the glow effect, you just basically make everything black and then add the glow over the top. You want to make it look like an old neon sign. I changed that because I want the image to still be legible behind it, and it's the only stark black in the image. And because of the bright, bubbly nature of the characters, their fuchsia colors, their neon colors, I thought it wouldn't look right if it was just all black in this one little quadrant. So I wanted to give it really simple, basic coloring. Then I will go over the top with my black acrylic paint pen, and then you'll just see the beautiful neon effect just kind of come all together. I don't go too heavy, as you can see, also because I want to be able to actually see the lines that I made underneath. If you are doing the neon effect, you can actually just double up all of the lines underneath the image before you make it all black, and then you'll be able to see it underneath when you're tracing over with your acrylic paint pens. With the neon effect complete, we can now move on to the anime style. Now you might be thinking to yourself, aren't they very similar? And yeah, they are, but there's certain things that much different from the movie as per the anime, or the anime style as I'm calling it on this one. Basically, any anime style follows certain tropes of drawing, but also it's a cellular based animation. And what that means is it's going to work basically on cells on top of each other, so of value. So you're going to have between 2 to 3 values of shading, and that's where the term cell shading comes from. It's basically the thin plastic that they would print on as you would get your 3D animations. Back in the old days of animating, you would actually put little tiny layers of cells over the top of each other to create the three-dimensional movement, either of a character or the three-dimensional of a character as they're just standing still. When it was shot from above, it would give all of those layers one three-dimensional look, but there were little blobs of color here and there and there and there, but then it made up the totality of the image. But enough of a history lesson. Basically, we're just going to work with 3 tones. We're going to sharpen up some of our lines and much thick, bolder outlines, and that's how we're going to get a beautiful little anime style. I think it works incredibly well for the characters. If they ever made the movie into a show, I would love to actually see it done in an anime style, but that's just because I'm a huge anime fan. With anime complete, we are now going to head on over to the movie style. And there's no simple way to put this. I'm just going to try and duplicate as best as I can what we see in the movie. I'm not going to try and do any extra highlights or shades or values. What you see is what you're going to get, and it's going to be as close as I think I can get it to look exactly how it is in the movie. One of the ways we're going to achieve this is by working in layers. These characters are layered in a very specific and meticulous way. Now, because it's a digital drawing, where they're doing it digitally, it's a lot easier when you're working this way. When you're working with mediums like this, you kind of have to finagle the paper a little bit and work with different mediums over the top of each other, like the hair, and you guys know that I'm not a fan of hair. It was a struggle, but I think it got pretty close to what the movie is. But let me know what you guys and gals think. Is it close to the movie? Is it not close to the movie? If you think it's horrible, that's okay too. But if you like it and you think it's pretty close, let me know in the comments. One trick that I do like to do is if I find that I've gone too dark, I will use a white pencil or a very, very light skin-toned peach to dull down the colors, because there's tons of bright highlights in the face here and in the cheekbones. It kind of just like pops off. It pops right out of the page practically. And a great way to achieve that, instead of trying to do paint pens and all this other stuff, just let the color pencils do all the work. It takes a long time, but that's how you get the beautiful effects. And now I hope you're in it for the long haul, because next up we have the realistic side. And the realistic side, and I know I say this and it's kind of like a dead horse, but it took me significantly longer. This whole side was probably about 4 to 5 hours for this little section, and that's just because I constantly changed my ideas of what medium I wanted to use for baby. And that's just because I wasn't sure if I should go color pencils or if I should go alcohol markers. In retrospect, after looking at the completed image, I probably should have just gone full alcohol markers and worked with just slow varying blends to get that smooth, hyper realistic that I was hoping to achieve. And instead, I tried to go with full color pencils, and I didn't have all the correct colors for skin tones, especially because baby is very, very light complexion, and so it didn't register as well for me. And this is a good teaching moment that I want to share with all of you. You're not going to like everything you ever do. You're not going to think that everything is great all the time. Sometimes what you might think is your worst work might actually be your best, and conversely, the other way around. This is a time where I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. The one thing that I liked most, which I always hate doing, is hair, and I actually love the way it came out. I don't know if it's because the eyes felt a little funny and I adjusted them at the very end, and you will see what I mean by when I adjusted them. I don't know if it's because I went too dark, as you're seeing here with the shadows, and because he has such a light complexion, it was a little unsettling and a little jarring. I don't know, honestly. All I can tell you is that just sometimes when you take a step back and you look at your artwork and then you reflect on it later on, you may love it, and other times you might absolutely hate it. It can always change and vary, but it's kind of what happens when you're an artist. Sometimes you'll come back a year later from a piece of artwork and absolutely love something you hated, or sometimes you'll come back a year later to something you loved and absolutely hate it, and you want to correct it. I just think of it as it's just the curse of the artist. You'll see things and you'll love it, and sometimes you'll absolutely hate it. And sometimes the things that you hate the most, other people will absolutely love. Conversely, once again, the other way around, things you absolutely love, people will be like, oh, that's nice, because it's just not their cup of tea, or whatever. But yeah, this was a little bit of a grind, and as you can see, it's just a lot of pushing and pulling with all the different types of color pencils, trying to find the right blends, the right mediums, the right values. Was it too dark? Was it too light? Was it too warm? Was it too cool? All these things. It's just way too much of a struggle. And I actually wound up taking some time working on something else and coming back to this before I completed it. But at the end of it, I was okay with it. And sometimes that's just what you have to do. To move on to the next section that you want to move on to, and just be okay with it, because not everything is going to be perfect, and that is fundamentally okay.
Dead to me, R.I.P. buried. 무리들이 몰려온다 사자해라 미리. Dead to me, R.I.P. buried. 무릎 꿇고 고개 숙여 반성해라 피리. 왜 이래요? 잘못 오셨네요. 상관없는 자에게는 묻지 마세요.
I will say, for everyone that is having trouble trying to complete hair and trying to get all those beautiful hair textures, a great thing you can do is just work gently in layers and use lots of lights. Now, one thing you can also do is work with inks like I did here over the top, because they will layer very beautifully and smooth over the waxy color pencils, and then that's how you get those beautiful hair textures. That's how I got the lovely smooth hair that was beautiful and flowing here. So if you want to work with your hair and trying to fix up some of the things with some hair drawing, I would just say try to use color pencils and work values over the top, and I think you'll get the desired effect overall. Some last minute highlights as we transition to the mystery side. Now, what would be the mystery side? Well, because of the bold graphical nature of the entire movie, I decided to make this into what I call the graffiti style. Now, how I'm going to execute the graffiti style is by using big, bold, flat cartoon style coloring like you'd see in a graffiti artwork, but I'm going to add much more vibrant color, so the hair is going to be a lot more ramped up with the values and the tones and the highlights and the shadows and the color. And then we're going to finish up with a nice, really cool border. Because it's mostly hair, I figured it's a really good thing. I didn't want to do drip, I didn't want to do glitch, I didn't want to do a lot of these kind of like quick cop-out excuse for drawing. I figured this was the best way to achieve something that has fun, graphical nature, something that it can resonate with the audience, and still look like a cohesive piece of artwork. And it kind of works with the neon, it works with the movie next to it, and it looks like it belongs. It looks like it's its own piece, it looks like it fits, and that's the essence of a lot of things I try to do. Does it all fit? Does each piece look like it belongs as part of the whole? A last minute little border around the outside just to give it that beautiful graphic graffiti style. It really, I think, encapsulates everything that the essence of the art style is about, and we are finished. Which side did you all like best? Let me know in the comments. As always, I appreciate it. We had the movie, we had puzzle, realistic, anime, cracked, stone, neon, and the mysterious graffiti style. Which was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for stopping by, and as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Today, I'm doing something wild. Drawing baby Saja in 4 completely different styles. We're talking realistic, horror, babyfied, and even a cracked stone one. One of these is adorable, and the other is nightmare fuel. Can you guess which one is which?
My little soda pop.
We're starting off today with realistic, and we're going to be using primarily color pencils for the entirety of realism. We want to start by adding a nice base layer of cream, and then adding a whole bunch of peach colors over the top. Here's a good tip on how I like to blend color pencils. You can either use a stump or a white color pencil. I prefer to use a white color pencil, but some people try to use a stump. One way you're going to achieve all of this is by gently working in small circular motions, as you're seeing me do here. As you work over the top, that's how you're going to blend everything out. Because baby Saja is such a light-skinned character, we want to use the darks sparingly. So we're not going to hit that much on the browns. Instead, we're going to focus on pulling the browns out with a lot of subtle blending. And please, when you're doing color pencil, do not blow to get rid of the dust. Use a brush. It won't smear the paper. If you sometimes blow, you can put spit on the paper, you can even smear the paper. We don't want to damage our good artwork. Just simply brush it off. Now, before we get too far into this little quadrant, I have to ask you, which is your favorite Saja boy, or are you a Huntrix person? Let me know in the comments which one is your favorite and why. Personally, for me, it's probably Derpy the Tiger or Zoe. But then again, I really do like Rumi and Ginu, but then again, I like a lot of the characters because I think the story is so well written. And when it comes out in the movie theaters in just a couple of days, will you be there for the sing-along that's going to happen inside the movie theaters? Are you going to be grabbing tickets? And what song do you want to sing the most if you are going to be in the movie theaters? Now here's a trick for hair. As you can see, I added a nice little base layer with the alcohol markers because they have a certain translucence. But for the most part, when you're working with all these fine little hairs, you're going to layer up with basically 3 colors, and that's how you're going to get all these nice little striations within the hair. So you're going to add the gray sparingly. We're going to go over it with a whole bunch of color. Then you want to mix and match all these little highlight hairs over the top. Next up, we have the cracked effect. For those of you who are new to my channel and you want to know what the cracked stone effect is, we basically want to transform baby Saja into a cracked stone statue. So how do we do that? We first add in where all the crack marks in, and then fill it in with a basic simple coloring. And for this effect, I will be primarily using my Ohuhu markers. As you can see here, they are a monstrous number. It's the 200 plus pack. Now, do you need all 200 markers? Absolutely not. You can get this effect with just about any marker, but Ohuhu for me give the most value for what you get as per quality. A lot of times in the comments, people ask me what art supplies I use, so that's why I'm going to be dropping what art supplies I use for each of the different quadrants, just so you get an idea of what I like to use on any given project. With the coloring complete, now we just have to add in all the nice little cracks and all the little lines, and you can add as little or as much as you want. This is where you can let your artistic side run wild and add as many cracked lines. I usually like to add a ton, but go wild. For the next, we're going to do the baby effect. And what is the baby effect? Well, it all starts with this comment that I saw here. I actually found it to be incredibly hilarious and a fun little challenge to try, so let's transform him into a baby. I drew heavy inspiration from Disney classics such as Merida from Brave, Moana, and Rapunzel. They just have that certain cherub-like quality the round features that are perfect for a cartoon Disney baby. And one way we're going to achieve having a really simple cartoon effect is by using paint pens. And the paint pens that I like to use are two. One are Grabby and the other are Shuttle Art. Both are really, really good, and I actually use them for multitude, even for just highlights and touch-ups. Not that I couldn't use alcohol markers, but paint pens specifically just add a really bold, vibrant color that sometimes alcohol markers just don't have. They can look a little wash or pastel-y at times, but with the pigmentation of a paint pen, it's just second to none. It layers so well. It's just so bold, and you don't get as really much streaking sometimes as you do with an alcohol marker. And that's why I just think it's perfect for any cartoon effect. If you notice, a lot of illustrators that do a lot of the really cool effects, like glitch, etc., they all use paint pens, and that's for a good reason. And of course, no baby effect would be complete without his bottle. I could have given a microphone, but a bottle just works so well. Demon Baby Saja might be horrifying, but not as horrifying as what you're about to see next. Let's get on to the horror style. My inspiration for this scene came from twofold. One, from the Harry Potter scene where Voldemort is finally revealed in the first movie. Yeah, I know, big spoiler alert. But I like this concept of what has baby Saja got underneath his cap? And maybe it's a demonized creature just living at the back of his skull, kind of like Voldemort was throughout the first movie. And my second was from one of my favorite B-horror movies from the 80s. It's a little movie called Basket Case, and well, be prepared for a jump scare because this creature is both horrifying and hilarious all at the same time. I mean, just look at that thing. I mean, it's too funny, but it does have really creepy effects to it, and I wanted to emulate that within this drawing, a combination of both my little ode to Basket Case and Voldemort all in one shot. And I really love the way this thing came out. It's funny, it's cartoony, it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is never really something I like to do with my horror. I like to keep it a little bit more on the fun and whimsical side. It is a family-friendly show. I do try to keep the gore to a minimum, but I do like making things look a bit scary when need be. Now, just because I'd make things a little less creepy or gory than some places doesn't mean there isn't going to be a lack of artistic value. And how we're going to do this is by adding tons of colors. See, even though there were some skin tones here, I'm adding lots of purples. I'm going to add tons of reds, and I'm going to slowly blend in the skin tones over the top. So this way it kind of looks like it's almost sewn or attached into the side of the head. Like the cap would just barely fit over it. And I want to put all these little tufts of hair, because I don't want it to be just a slimy looking creature. I want it to almost look like they are one and the same. So we have to add those little tufts of hair all throughout. And then same thing, we're going to give it this nice treatment of making sure that all the hairs look like they're in place. We're going to make sure that the shadow and the shading are all there, but we're not going to keep the hair clean. We're not keeping the hair neat here. We're going to put all the little hairs in all the little spots. We're going to add some rough color pencil shading over the top. And the reason why we're going to do the rough color pencil shading is because I want to add all that nice texture that the paper has. And that's how we get all those details. Then when the drawing is almost finished, we add in all these little individual hairs over the top just to make it look a little bit more bedraggled. But we got to add in all the shading within the eye, making sure that the eye is not just white. We want to make sure that we add all the color in it too, because it does have color and it needs to be there. It needs to be held accountable because it's important. And that final little highlight, and we are just about complete with a little bit of saliva action. Okay, so which side of Baby Saja was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like this, then YouTube will think that you'll absolutely love the drawing that's coming on your screen now. Mystery Saja is one of the most complex characters in all of Kpop Demon Hunters, primarily because you don't actually see what's underneath his hair. And today we're going to unravel that mystery as we draw Mystery Saja in 4 different styles. Let's get to it. Let's start off with the X-ray effect. And to start this effect, we're going to need a lot of black. We're going to have to cover this entire section in pure black, because I'm taking a little bit of a different route than normal. This was actually really unique and complex for me because although I have tried the new X-ray style, I haven't tried it with all the complexities of human bones. I had to kind of work back to my college days where we'd study skeletons, and that's just really kind of interesting and cool, but also really hard to break down. The intent behind this particular section is to make it look like an actual X-ray. I want you to see Mystery Saja's hands, the bone structures. I want you to see the ribs, the chest plate, all in the intricate pose. So we're going to have to actually measure out where all of the different positions of the bones will be. But on top of that, there's going to be depth considerations to take into effect. The hands in the front are going to be a heck of a lot more bright than they are in the back. It's going to be a lot more subdued. And when you see x-rays and you study x-rays, you'll see all these different subtle variations. That's where the studying comes in when you want to learn anything of any complex nature. So I think it came out really good. What do you think? Let me know in the comments as now we move on to the wood style. Now before we get a little bit too further in the video, what do you think about the t-shirt? Are you guys familiar with Bruce Doo? It's kind of a little bit of an adult-based cartoon. Kind of tells stories from his childhood. It's something that I was thinking about doing, so if you'd like to see me do like cartoon characters, retelling a lot of the silly stories that I did as an adult, let me know in the comments. In this particular section, we're not going to go too complex with the color palette. It's going to be kept minimalistic. Yellows, browns, at a minimum. And to go into a little bit more detail as to why that is, I'll explain here. Wood has a lot of unique complexities to it, because you can't just uniquely slap a brown across the front and call it wood. You have to think about all the minutiae of all the grains that go into it, all the little subtle shadows and variants. So that's what we're going to try to explain and explore as we go through this particular section. So then how do we go about transforming Mystery Saja into a wood statue or a wood piece of board and not just make it look like a brown mess? Well, that's how we're going to work slowly with lots of subtle striping. We're actually going to use a little bit of what I like to call a flick technique. So as you can see with a couple of the areas, I'm not going slowly back and forth, or I'm in fact allowing it to intentionally streak. I want the colors to look a little streaky because when we look at wood, you're going to see that it has striping across it. It has subtle little lines built in throughout. That's what gives the wood grain that texture. That's why if you ever see something that's wood stained, you can see it even more. It's even more amplified because the stain goes in between all the little ridges of all the burls, and that's where you get all that incredible texture. I will say though, for me, this section came out really good. At first it was a little shaky, but as it was developing and as the piece came together and all the depth came in, it looked more like a tiki and more like the wood that I wanted to see. But was it a dud? Let me know as we head over to realistic. Now you all know this, and I've said this a lot, realism takes time. There is no simple magic ingredient. I really wish there was, but sadly there isn't. It's about studying and time. Two things that sometimes we just don't have enough of, but it's just going to take that. You have to take time. You have to take time to practice. You have to take time to study. And in this day and age, nobody really wants to crack open a book. But the best thing is, YouTube has a plethora of videos out there to help you. There's so many great tutorials out there. Don't just look for me. I don't really want to be a teacher. I thought I really did, but I really don't. What I want to do most is inspire. Inspire all of you to get out there and try something new. Get out of your comfort zone. If you're an anime artist, try realism. If you're a realism artist, try landscape or abstract. Have fun and enjoy the experience. That's what I want to try and have all of you guys and girls do at home. Mystery Saja is a lot of hair, and as you know, hair is not something that I genuinely like to do, but I'm going to help you break down hair to make it a lot easier for you to draw. So as you can see here, we want to essentially break down hair into its separate areas. We want to showcase where the curves are, where the bends are, where the highlights would be. That's why I left the middle of the area white. Once you have like a base layer down of your general shape and minimal highlights, what you want to do is start folding in some darks and then with alcohol markers, because it works so well with hair, you want to fold in a mid-tone over your dark. It'll help smooth out that shadow area and give you that subtle variance with hair texture. But for the most part, what we're going to focus on is a lot of color pencil work. This will make it look less like a helmet and more like hair. See, when you add layers across the top, you don't just want to add it in one swooping motion. That'll give it too much of a plastic look, too much like a doll. So what we want to do is fade out and add in subtle purples, little bits of black, little bits of red where you can. You want to add in all these things because all different types of hair, no matter it's blue, red, yellow, purple, or even in this case, a grayish color, they're going to have all subtle colors within them. Everything, black, white, etc. All hair has it. So what do? We make it weave over in and out all throughout, little couple of hairs astray. That's how it'll give it more of a real life texture to it. That's what gives it more volume in a sense. But now let's talk about the section that I really didn't like at all, and that is, well, the face. Because the reference image was so cast in shadow, it made it really hard to make it look accurate. It just didn't come out right to me. I don't know. Sometimes it's hit and sometimes it's miss. But I wound up constantly going back and forth with too many colors on top of each other. It was starting to get muddy, so I just kind of let it go. I let the hair essence be the focal point of the entire thing. And I think that's when it actually started to come together a little bit, but it's still not my favorite realistic work. I'm going to admit it, I'm just not a fan of this particular section. Now let's head on to the mystery side. Now for the mystery, I was thinking about a unique comment that I got, and that was to do anime, but I was like, well, that's not really mysterious. So what do? And that's when I came up with, you have to show the eye. You have to show everyone the eye that they want to see at home. So we're going to add a little bit of Griffith and Sungjin Woo from Solo Leveling in and make a really unique character that I think you will absolutely love. Initially, I had a little bit of trouble with working out where I wanted the eye to be just placed. And after a couple of sketches and a couple of rough sketching outlining, I was able to come across a placement that I think fits just right. Now, as you can tell, I, like I said, worked with both Griffith from Berserk, and if you haven't seen Berserk, well, it is a highly mature anime. It is something I would not recommend for a younger audience at all. But I worked with him and Sungjin Woo from Solo Leveling, which is honestly one of my favorite animes. I also read the manhwa, and I finished Ragnarok up until its most current iteration, but yeah, it's a must-read. So I did want some of the hair to sweep in front of the face. I wanted it to look, once again, similar to the characters that I mentioned above. I love Jinwoo's eyes, I love Griffith's hair, I think it's a perfect match, but I kind of blended both the captivating blue eyes of Sungjin Woo, the hairstyle of Griffith, and the facial structure of Griffith with a little bit of the jawline of Sungjin Woo, that really strong, pointed chin that just gives it a certain characterization I think fits incredibly well for the overall design. But it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what you all think watching this now. Do you like what you see out of the eye? Is it kind of a hit? Is it kind of a miss? I would like to know your honest opinion. Do you think this would actually fit the character of Mystery if all of a sudden he swept back his hair in a future video? Maybe he's still alive. We don't know. If you didn't watch it, I'm not spoiling nothing. But if he did just sweep back his hair and all of a sudden you caught a glimpse or a glimmer of his eye, would this be what you would think? Or would it be something that you just thought, nah, it's not for me? Let me know in the comments, because I ultimately love reading each comment that I come across. And as we are about to wrap things up, I always ask, if you can please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It lets YouTube know that you really like the content, and it lets me know that you guys really want to keep seeing the content. So I also want to know from you, which side was your favorite? Was it the realistic? Was it the X-ray? The wooden? Or seeing Mystery's eye unfold? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for stopping by, and as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Gino is the leader of the Saja boys from the movie Kpop Demon Hunters, and today we draw his demon form in 4 different styles. And the 4 different styles that we have today are realistic, horror, cracked, and pop art. Let's start off with the cracked effect. I saw this movie over the weekend, and I actually have to admit that I genuinely like it. And not just kind of like it, I mean, I really like it. These songs were fun and upbeat, they fit the genre incredibly well. I like how it doesn't take itself too seriously, but also has a great message about women empowerment, and also I just kind of like it where you have a really good kick-ass roll of girls just having fun throughout the movie. And you don't really see that much in movies, and this isn't about politics or anything like that, but in general I find that you just don't see like a really good, strong female lead in an action-oriented movie without there being some type of subtext. This is just a feel-good, fun action movie, and I think that's why, for me, it resonates so well. I liken it to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of like my youth. I can actually see these girls going on to not just like movies, but other future like animated shows on Netflix. You almost want to see more of their adventures, and there's a certain level of universality to the movie itself, in that the songs are just so catchy and they inspire you. They hit on so many different levels, whether it's like the fun, bubbly soda pop or the heart-hitting golden. They really resonate with different people, but not only that, but different people at different points in their life and what they might be going through. And that's the beauty of a movie, no matter what kind of movie it is. As me as a 42-year-old guy, it affects me just the same as it might affect a 13-year-old girl. And that's what the awesome nature of movie making is all about. Let me know in the comments if you want a little bit more of my personal commentary, either on characters or about the movie itself. I figured I'd open up and be a little bit more honest about how I feel about some of the characters that I draw that you guys and gals love, but I also just want to hear your thoughts about it, because I am a writer on top of everything, and I do love talking about characters. I love talking about movies. I love expressing how I feel and how something makes me feel when I see it, how movies and music move and inspire. So if it's something you want to hear more of, let me know in the comments, because I'm always open to suggestions. Now, let's talk about the cracked effect real quick before we complete it up. The object is to basically make Gino look like cracked stone. And it's a very simple execution and a lot of fun, but just takes a little bit of mastery. But with the cracked effect complete, let's head on over to the realistic side. Now, for fans of my channel, you'll know that I almost always put a realistic side into all of my drawings. It's kind of what everyone comes to expect whenever they see one of my 4 different styles. And that's because I really love taking the time to make something look as realistic as possible. There's just a catch with this. There isn't really a realistic Demon Gino. Not at least in the movie. I mean, there's what we have in the movie, but that's more of a surrealistic view, because there is no such thing as demons as we know it or see it, so we have to kind of give an imagination what we think, and that's where the beauty of the animators and the creators of these characters kind of reinvent all of these different characters in fun new ways. I love how they kept it kind of mysterious, but also kept it really simple at the same time. So throughout the movie, Gino pretty much just looks the same. I mean, yes, when he brings his demon identity out, he has the tattoos and the markings, but for the most part, he still kind of looks the same. So my approach for this overall drawing then is, how do we take something that is realistic but also imaginary and apply it? Well, that's where we're going to do a little bit of realism meets surrealism. So we're going to take the elements that we see in the movie and try and give it a realistic composition, but with the surrealist colors that I love to do. I love to apply colors and shades and values that might not necessarily be seen correctly by the eye, but then replicate them in a different light. So here's how I basically went about it. I'm going to work gently in layers, but I'm going to work over it a lot with color pencils. So I start off with my base layers of alcohol markers, and I'm going to blend in softly. I basically want to just use this time to decide where my shapes and values are. And from there, that's where we're going to build up with the color pencils. It's kind of like sketching, but with color. And that's actually a really good exercise for any young artist at home. It's okay to kind of constantly go over things and change your mind. That's what I do when I paint. I'm constantly correcting. It's kind of the push and pull of how you develop the image in your head on the canvas. Same is applied here. I'm kind of changing the colors constantly. I'm bouncing color pencils constantly, and I'm bouncing values all over the place until I find that harmonious balance that I'm looking for. Now, this is all just fun artistic jargon, but essentially what I'm doing is, what kind of blues do I like, what kind of greens do I like, what kind of yellows, etc. But for Genu, he's mainly blues and purples in his demon form, so it's what kind of blues and what kind of purples do I want? Because for me, I'm horrible with color selection. I know this. It takes me a long time. I go through sheets and sheets of scrap paper just to see which color I want to use, and in the end, it's kind of a struggle, and that's okay. But I don't want to develop it on the paper where I might either A, waste materials, or B, waste time, and also I don't want to stress the paper. Later on, when I get to the horror side, I almost tear the paper apart because I almost stressed it too much. And that's a really good tip for every young artist. If you're working with certain medium, like Posca markers and alcohol markers, make sure they dry thoroughly before you go to your next application. Whether it's another base layer, or as you can see where I'm really scrubbing in this color pencil here, you really need to let those layers dry. You need to then work slowly over the image, because I don't care how quality the paper is, I don't care how strong and durable it is, I don't care what kind of pressure it has, etc. It ain't gonna last over time. You're gonna have to then basically work very gently, or else you're just gonna destroy it. And I know this goes without saying because I say it in all of my videos, but realism does take time. This is sped up at 6 times speed, and as you can see, it's kind of a crawl. Look at how much dust comes off these color pencils that I'm basically scrubbing away now. But we're going to get these nice little surreal tones by scrubbing in this light over all the darks. It's going to give it this kind of ethereal feel to it. That's why I didn't want to just completely go away from all of that underpainting that I did with the alcohol markers. But color pencils will get you so much better quality of an image. They just take a heck of a lot longer. So if you're going to work primarily in color pencils, be in it for the long haul. It is the long game. The eye was a bit of a challenge here. I did kind of struggle with trying to get this concept of this triangular eye. It was a little bit of a hassle because it just didn't feel right. It didn't fit. And then I realized there was the eye shape. And that's where everything kind of changed. As you can see, once I changed that eye shape, it now looks and feels just right. Then I didn't want to just blot in the little marks here. I wanted them to actually feel like they were pulsating on his face. I wanted to make it feel like they have a weight. So you have to add that little bit of shadow underneath. And then it all just comes together and looks just right. Throwing down this last little bit of color, as now we are going to head on over to the pop art side. Now you might be thinking, well, what's pop art? Well, pop art was the inspiration for the 1950s art movement. At its crux, it kind of just basically uses imagery from mass media and pop culture. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, isn't that every bit of art that we see nowadays? Yes and no, because pop art wasn't just about taking everyday objects or comic book characters and using it as a stylized thing. It was used also for humorous commentary, and the biggest thing was its attack on pop culture and consumerism, kind of flipping it in on its head. Andy Warhol did this amazingly well with its infamous Campbell Soup paintings. It was basically a display to show that, like, not everything in pop culture may be good or bad, but it had the intent, and that's what made pop art stand out, was the concept of intent. Intent is the key behind all art medium. What is the intent of the artist when they are creating art? For me, a lot of my intent is just to have fun and inspire you, the next generation of young artists or new artists, to take up a pen or a brush and create something that they love. So I will say, for all the young artists out there, draw what you love, paint what you love, have fun with it. Don't get too mired down in what your intent may or may not be. That's for a more critical discussion later on if you decide to go into art school. But more about the art itself. What you want to try to achieve with the pop art style is bold comic book style references. And the intent behind it is not just to make it look like a comic book, but to take something that is very iconography, such as Genu right now. He is popular. And then apply it with a cartoon style. So as you can see, it's really bold, thick black outlines, and that's how we get the pop art style. But now, let's head on to the horror style. I will thoroughly admit that I initially struggled with the concept for a horror Genu. And the reason being is I didn't know what I wanted to do. Did I want to do like a thorny demon? Did I want to do like some big Goliath of a red monstrosity creature? I kind of just didn't know where to go. So I started with the abstraction. And as you can see here, I just layered down the dark purple that's very reminiscent of him and worked by subtraction. I wanted this to be voidless. I really wanted this to be breadth of all detail and let the mind kind of play itself out. It's kind of like when you sit in a dark hallway and you kind of feel that sense of unease. That's what I wanted to reflect here. I want this character with very little detail to make you feel very worried. It's not scary, but you don't know why you feel afraid looking at it. When you look at the abyss, as the saying goes, when you stare at the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back, and that's kind of how I want this image to resonate. I want this thing to look so scary and so frightening, but yet have no detail, have no gore. There's nothing that would make you intrinsically think, oh my god, I'm frightened. But I want this to translate actually like that. And it might seem weird, like how can that be? But I think by the end of this, it'll have this really unsettling nature that I just absolutely love. Because I want to showcase how you don't need a hyper amount of detail for something to appear scary. And that, I think, is the ultimate form of what horror truly is and what horror truly can be. It doesn't have to have bulging eyes. It doesn't have to have a million thorns. It can sometimes be the abstraction of everything manifest that becomes super scary. Now maybe I'm reading a little bit too much deep into this. Maybe I'm just adding kind of like the artistic nature of overanalyzing, but this is I basically let my mind run wild when I was coming up with this design. I just went hog wild with it, and in the end, I'm glad that I did, because I think this design is really, really cool. And just like that, the video is over. Which side did you like most? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you all in the next video.